Am I the a-hole for calling my father's wife a creep? My 32F father, 60s, has been married to Sasha, fake name 40s, for nearly a decade. I was already an adult when they began dating, so I never developed much of a connection with her. That said, Sasha was kind and considerate, though a bit irritating at times, and I never had any significant issues with her. I now have a husband, 34M, and 2 kids, 9M and 4F. Sasha is very fond of my children, especially my daughter. That became overwhelming pretty quickly, so we started setting some boundaries. She never violated them. In January, my father and Sasha decided to take a trip to Disney World and invited us to join them. We decided to go to celebrate our son's 9th birthday. I quickly regretted coming along. Sasha spent the entire trip fussing over my daughter in ways that violated almost every boundary we'd set. Examples include, Sasha bought a Minnie Ears tiara. She wanted me to buy my daughter an identical one so they could match. My daughter didn't like the tiara, so I bought her a Donald Duck hat instead. Sasha got her the tiara anyway and was upset that she didn't want to wear it. My father and Sasha went shopping between parks. I told them not to buy my kids anything, as we still had shopping to do and didn't want to risk making our bags too heavy. Still, Sasha returned with 5 bags of clothing for my daughter and 2 for my son, saying she couldn't resist. My daughter wanted a Belle costume to wear at the parks, as that's her favorite princess. Sasha tried to convince us to get her an Ariel costume instead, because that's her favorite. I explained that we never watched The Little Mermaid at home because my daughter is scared of Ursula. Sasha insisted on taking dozens of pictures with my daughter in front of the castle at Magic Kingdom. She also took some with my son, but not nearly as many. She tried to convince us to take our daughter to Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. We refused because the prices were insane and we'd already bought her the Belle costume. She offered to pay, but we stood our ground. I later discovered that Sasha tried to make a reservation anyway, but there was no availability. When we took our daughter to Slinky Dog Dash, her first roller coaster, Sasha tried to sit next to her. My daughter wanted to sit with me, so we swapped places. She attempted the same thing at other attractions. At the Muppets Theater, she tried to get my daughter to sit in her lap. Sasha also attempted to pick her up while we met some of the characters. There were additional instances. The final straw for me, however, was the last park day of the trip. We were at Magic Kingdom. My husband suffered a minor injury, so I had to take him to the first aid station. The kids wanted to go to the Peter Pan ride, so my dad and Sasha offered to take them in the meantime. However, according to my father, the line was too long. So instead, Sasha suggested the Little Mermaid ride, reassuring my kids Ursula wasn't on it. Actually, there's a pretty big Ursula animatronic there. My daughter was still sobbing and hugging her brother when we reunited. When we flew back home, I told my father that we'd no longer take our children on trips with Sasha due to her behavior. He got extremely angry. He said his wife loved my kids, thought about what they'd like to do at every moment of the trip, and that we should be grateful to have her in our lives. I lost my temper at that. I told him Sasha was a fucking creep, and that they should be grateful I was still okay with them even seeing my children after her actions during the trip. We ended up having a huge fight after that. It's been weeks since we returned home, and my father is still angry at me and my husband. Sasha has texted me a few times. She says she's sorry if she made me uncomfortable, but that she loves my kids and hoped to use the trip to spend more time with them. To be honest, I don't think I'm the a-hole here, but I do think I might have overreacted. I believe there's a chance Sasha's actions were motivated by love, and she truly did have good intentions. Update. Hey everyone, I'm ready to give you an update. I read your comments and came to the following conclusion. As much as Sasha's behavior towards my children angered me and freaked me out, calling her a creep was the wrong reaction to have. That said, I think it's best for my family to distance itself from Sasha for the time being, and at the very least, my previous decision to avoid future trips with her based on the Disney trip is still the best course of action. Sasha's pushiness, tendency to override my and my husband's parenting, and blatant favoritism towards my daughter were much worse when the kids were younger. After my daughter's birth, she began to focus too much attention on her and almost none on my son. I gave more examples of that in the comments on my original post. That's the reason we set boundaries in the first place. The way she fusses over my daughter also bothers me. When we had the boundary conversation with my father and Sasha, she told us that she'd always wondered what having a daughter would be like. She'd also defined herself as child-free before, so I was never certain what to think of that. Either way, that reassured me and my husband that we were doing the best for our kids. Those boundaries had never overstepped. Then we went on the Disney trip, and most of them were completely ignored. Many of you pointed out that she might have gotten carried away, or that Disney is exciting and she wanted to make sure my kids had the best experience, etc. There are 2 things I'll say to that. The first is that whatever Sasha's reasons were, she still overstepped our boundaries. When we first set those, we told her that doing so would have consequences. Disney or not, I don't see a reason to make an exception. Secondly, she wasn't trying to ensure my kids had the best experience. She was pressuring them to fulfill her vision of what their Disney vacation should resemble. She consistently disregarded my kids' preferences in favor of her own, even though they were both quite clear about what they liked and disliked. Sasha also persistently favored my daughter, including during my son's birthday, and doted on her in ways that made her uneasy. And I still haven't forgiven the Little Mermaid isolated incident. My daughter is a bit reserved and takes a while to warm up to most people. So knowing her trust was betrayed like that enrages me in ways I can't express. To put it plainly, my kids aren't accessories, and anyone who treats them as such will, at the very least, face a timeout. I called my father and Sasha on Saturday. I apologized for calling Sasha a creep, but told them we needed some distance. They won't see my family until my younger sister's birthday in late April. If that goes well, they'll be invited to my daughter's 5th birthday party in May. After that, we'll gradually work on rebuilding contact. I also said that if they crossed our boundaries again, the consequences would be more severe. My father didn't handle it well. I don't care. Sasha texted me more apologies, followed by a request to at least FaceTime my kids occasionally. I said no. And to those who said my controlling behavior ruined the trip, my kids had an awesome time at Disney World. They're both still talking about it. My daughter keeps asking us to display her photos with the characters she met on the wall, and my son says he had the best birthday ever. I think that's all. Thank you for your advice and support on my first post. Relevant comments. Canyon Moon, you shielded your kids, and that's the best thing you can do in any situation. I'm glad they're still talking about the trip, despite favoritism and the Ursula animatronic, which means you and your husband managed to overshadow all of that with wonderful memories. For the possible reconciliation, everyone can act normal for a day, the birthday in late April, especially if they know there's a goalpost on that day. It's the behavior over time that counts. If they're still messaging you, requesting video calls, and calling you unreasonable despite you clearly saying you want NC, you could begin a tally. 1 point for each request, and when it reaches a certain amount of points, they'll have their timeout extended because they obviously don't understand boundaries yet. OP. That's excellent advice. We don't want to go NC, but we will if our boundaries are disrespected. Knowing my father, a tally wouldn't be well received. I'm doing my best to avoid turning this into a bigger fight, but that kind of system would probably make things worse. It might be worth a shot though. I'll talk to my husband about it. Scarlett May West, thanks for the update. You are doing the right thing and are prepared if your father and Sasha keep trying to push against your boundaries. Make sure anyone who might take their side is fully aware of the consequences of trying to mediate or help them. Oop. Thankfully, no one's taking their sides. At most, my sister said I'd been cruel to them. A commenter asked OP if she has spoken with her daughter about being uncomfortable with Sasha. OP, thank you for sharing that. It's always been clear that my daughter was uncomfortable with Sasha's behavior, which is why we made so many efforts to reinforce our boundaries. Timid or not, she was very vocal about what she wanted, be it our company, not Sasha's, or specific rides and souvenirs. In spite of that, I know we didn't shield our daughter from everything. She's only 4, so I know the situation was a lot for her to process, and she can't articulate her feelings as well as her brother can, but she's not looking forward to seeing Sasha anytime soon, and I intend to respect that. Cuspuff Queens. I see so many instances of women being taken into custody for inappropriate sexual interactions with minors that I'm fully convinced any adult who fixates on a child like that has bad motives, irrespective of gender. You definitely made the right choice, and I would strongly advocate for not leaving your children, but especially your daughter, alone with her, or allowing unsupervised contact. Thank you for standing up for your children and what makes them comfortable. Oop. Neither of my kids have ever been alone with Sasha. She's tried to volunteer babysitting services before, but we always say no. My son doesn't like her, and my daughter will usually follow his lead. Update. Last time I posted here, I mentioned that my father and Sasha wouldn't see my children until my younger sister's birthday. The party took place last weekend, and we didn't attend. These 2 months of no contact worked okay, but not great. My father respected my wishes, to my surprise, but Sasha kept trying to find ways to talk to my children. She'd call me under the pretext of needing to ask me something, only to later say, by the way, are the kids around? I want to say hi. Every time she tried that, I'd remind her of what I'd told her back in March. This must have happened almost a dozen times, which was enough for my husband and me to start debating on skipping the party. After talking to our kids, we decided not to go. They both said they missed my father, but clearly didn't want to see Sasha. We considered attending and just keeping our distance from her while there, but risking making our children uncomfortable wasn't worth it. My son even asked if we could see their aunt somewhere else without Sasha around. My husband and I explained the situation to my sister. She was upset, but mostly because she hadn't seen the kids in a while. We all went to dinner at her favorite restaurant the day after her party. I also called my father and told him we wouldn't go to the birthday gathering. He reacted better than I anticipated, but we still had a brief argument about it. He insisted that I had promised we'd let Sasha see the kids after 2 months, labeled me as unfair, and said he was entitled to have a relationship with his grandchildren. I instantly denied that. Though I attempted to soften it initially, I eventually gave him the truth. My kids don't want to see his wife, and I won't force them to. My father and I had a lengthy conversation. I told him how much Sasha's behavior during the Disney trip upset my children, as well as how uncomfortable my husband and I felt. I admitted I don't trust his wife at all, and I don't think I ever truly will. He said that while he still believed I was overreacting, he understood that I wanted to protect my kids. My dad also told me about how these 2 months of no contact were for them. Apparently, Sasha started talking about my kids, mostly my daughter, much more than usual. She'd mentioned things and places she thought they would enjoy. My father was aware of one of the times times she called me, but thought it was a one-time occurrence. She wanted to give my daughter a gift at my sister's birthday party. He said he didn't know why. At one point, she informed him she wanted to plan another family vacation with the kids, even though I told them they're not traveling with Sasha anymore. Discovering all of that just made me more certain that I can't trust this woman around my children. For now, I intend to remain in limited contact with my father and no contact with Sasha. My daughter told me she wanted her grandpa at her birthday party a few weeks from now, so I told him he was invited, but Sasha wasn't. He agreed. To be honest, I don't trust my father after all of this. I'm allowing him to come because that party will take place at my home, which is easier for me to control. If he tries to bring Sasha, they'll both be kicked out, and it will take a long time for me to consider letting him near my kids again. My father hasn't told me how his wife is reacting to this. My sister mentioned that during her party, Sasha asked her to convey that she wanted to talk to me. I am not reaching out to her, nor do I intend to respond if she tries to contact me. Both my husband and I have blocked her. My children are doing fantastic. They still reminisce about the fun they had at Disney. My daughter has been saving money, putting coins in her piggy bank for a return trip. On a completely different note, I'm pregnant again. This was completely unplanned. I always said I wanted 2 kids at most, and the third would have to be a huge accident, but my husband and I are ecstatic. I'm still in the first trimester, so not many people know. We're brainstorming ways to tell our kids. Overall, I'm content with my life right now. And as much as I wish this Sasha situation had never happened, I feel like a more capable parent after dealing with it. I have never been more confident in my ability to protect my children than I am now. I don't think I'll update again anytime soon. Once again, thank you for all the support you've given me. I wish you the best. OP on being accused of turning her children against her father's wife and avoiding events when Sasha is present. OP. As much as I appreciate your insight, allow me to explain why I won't change my mind on this subject. First of all, I'm not worried about avoiding too many events. My paternal family is smaller than my maternal side, and there aren't many get-togethers in the first place. The only reason my dad even went to my sister's birthday party was because she wanted to introduce her boyfriend to him. My father has also seen my children without Sasha several times before, so that's not a concern either. I don't dislike Sasha. Even if I did, I've always been very careful not to let my opinions on others affect my children, specifically because I aim to teach them to be polite, but my kids are allowed to express themselves. If they don't like person X, they don't have to be around person X. It doesn't matter how much person X wants to see them. I'm not teaching them to sacrifice their comfort for someone who doesn't actually care about them. And no, Sasha doesn't actually care about my children, nor has she tried to build a relationship with them. Instead, she tries to push them, especially my daughter, to do what she wants to see them doing. Almost none of her actions during the Disney trip were for my daughter's benefit. They were for hers. Sasha is not my children's grandmother. They don't see her as such. She doesn't want to be seen as such. She calls herself Aunt. Her actions weren't doting, nor did they have anything to do with her not being able to formulate relationships with children. She doesn't care about my daughter's happiness. She just treats her like a doll. My son, meanwhile, is cast aside. If someone overwhelms one of my children and ignores the other on his birthday, they don't need to be around my kids. To answer the other part of your question, I have spoken with Sasha. It was the whole point of the boundary conversation. I communicated what was wrong and what she could do to improve. Whenever I try to set boundaries, Sasha disrespects them. She does not listen to me. It's not my job to teach her how to build a relationship with my kids any more than I already have. That's the point of this NC policy. Sasha doesn't listen to me or my children. If my kids didn't mind, I'd consider other ways of approaching this, but they do mind, and I refuse to force them to be around someone who disrespects them. And the fact that she refuses to listen to my children and insists on pushing her fantasies onto my daughter is enough for me to go NC. I have no intention of updating anytime soon, nor am I looking for any more advice. Thank you for your concern.